Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freighter. Unless a way is found to whitewash the history of the community of Flanker in St. James, the name Metro McFarlane will go down in infamy in the history of that community forever. This is on account of an incident that occurred in the community on October 25, 2003, when taxi operator 62-year-old David Bacchas and 66-year-old Cecil Brown were brutally murdered in a bogus shooting which the police claim was a shootout. While McFarlane and the 4 other police officers who were charged in connection with that killing were freed by a jury in the Home Circuit Court in Kingston, the fact that the then Minister of National Security, Dr. Peter Phillips, personally went down to Flanker and apologized to the families of Mr. Bacchas and Mr. Brown leaves no doubt that he too knew it was not a justifiable shooting. Subsequent to his own demise some 2 years later, McFarlane, who was seen as a maverick by many, had at least 2 close calls with death. Firstly, he was shot and injured in a gunfight with gangsters in the Glendevon area. And secondly, he was attacked by gunmen while playing dominoes in Mount Salem, and he had to flee for his life. In that incident, 2 persons were killed by bullets that were meant for him. McFarlane, who was an ardent football fan and a lover of Cornwall College, regularly got in trouble with his superiors because he was considered somewhat of an hothead who would constantly get in trouble with members of the public who saw him more as a troublemaker than a police. Based on his reputation, it is somewhat ironic that on the day he was killed, he was out doing a good deed, albeit he was on suspension from duty at the time of the incident. In this edition of Lest You Forget, we will be looking back at the killing of Metro from his mother's perspective, from a story that was published in the Jamaica Gleaner on January 18, 2010, under the headline, "Mom in Shock as Son is First Cop to Die." The story read as follows. The burden of a son's death on the heart of a mother is something Gwen Clark is trying as best as possible to deal with following the untimely death of her son, policeman Metro McFarlane, who was killed in a bizarre shooting incident on Saturday. "The family, including myself, is not coping too well," Clark cried. "I spoke with him on Friday about a lot of things. He called to talk about what was happening in his life and his plans throughout the course of the year and such," the distraught mother told the Gleaner. "I just never imagined we would get a call that my son is shot and killed by a policeman," and obviously upset Clark lamented. McFarlane was killed by one of his colleagues as he attempted to apprehend a pickpocket who had robbed an individual in downtown Montego Bay. The body of her son in the road, soaked with blood, brought Clark to the verge of fainting as she had to be assisted by a family member who removed her from the scene. The cop, who has been on suspension from the Island Special Constabulary Force for the past year, was armed with his licensed firearm in pursuit of the criminal when he was shot by another policeman dressed in civilian clothes. In a press release issued yesterday, Glenmuir Hines, acting Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of the operations portfolio, described the incident as regrettable. The police are mainly through an investigation which is currently underway by the Bureau of Special Investigation, trying to ascertain with as much accuracy as possible the details of what happened when these 2 officers in plainclothes engaged each other, Hines said. A preliminary report is expected on the death of Acting Commissioner of Police Owen Ellington by midday on Tuesday. In the interim, the officer involved has had his hand swabbed and has been taking off frontline duties, added Hines. The police are urging members of the public who witnessed the incident to give statements to the BSI. DCP Hines said this would help to accelerate the investigation. Raymond Wilson, chairman of the Jamaica Police Federation, said he could not comment on the issue at this time as he did not have all the facts. Wilson said that the directive has already been given by the Federation to be part of the investigation. In the lead up to McFarlane's funeral, his family complained about the slow pace of the investigation into his death. He was buried without fanfare. While at the time of the incident, persons claimed that they had overheard McFarlane shouting out to his colleague that he was a policeman before he was shot. It would appear that no one came forward with evidence to support that claim. However, 2 years after McFarlane was killed, the police officer who fired the fatal shot, Constable Sheldon Parkinson, was charged with murder. Despite research done on the matter, it still remains unclear as to whether or not the case is still before the court or was disposed of without the knowledge of the public. However, in looking back at the life and times of Metro McFarlane, the way he lived and the way he died make his story one of those unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica. Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freitas. Before you go, please remember to subscribe.